So I would like to know, Gary, what hurdles have you come across going down the co-production route, and how have you overcome them?
So it's a really good question, and I have to confess that, you know, there have been times when I've thought, you know what, this would be easier if I reverted to type, dare I say, and start cutting these discussions short and saying, right, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. Because the biggest hurdle you face is time. Okay. And the second biggest hurdle is the cost of the suggestions. Sometimes they can lack a little practicality.
Okay.
Right? Because it's natural.
Mm-hmm.
If you're asking someone what they want from a hospital, they could be asking for massive things that are just going to be out of budget. So there's a degree of practicality, I think, is the point you have to get to. You've got to keep reminding yourself, however, that one, you haven't got all the answers. So you might think you have, and you might have thought you had in a previous part of your career where you get quite used to just making decisions and getting things moving. But it's worth the investment to avoid that getting it wrong first time. Mm-hmm. So there are times, and there are still times, and we're still facing them, where somebody says, well, what we want is X. And I'm thinking, we're just not going to be able to afford it. We're just not going to be able to afford it. You've got to look deeper and think, well, what's the cost of not doing it? What's the potential cost of not doing it? You've also got to be bold about setting parameters. So for me, one of the lessons is co-production isn't you can have anything you want. So
that's a good tip.
You know, it's about setting reasonable parameters. If you're scared of practicality or a lack of practicality, set a reasonable parameter for people to co-produce within. But don't make it so narrow that the outcome is predetermined.
Yeah.
That's what you've got to guard against. Yeah, that's what you've got to guard against, because it's easy to say, right, you can have whatever you want as long as you do it within £1,000, and immediately you've just thrown away all the creativity because you've set the barrier too tight.
That's the risk.
So that's exactly it.
Yeah.
So, and in itself, it's a barrier. So it's about giving people enough scope and space to be creative and enough time to be creative. You've got to fight against some pretty deep-rooted feelings about wanting to go, if you're anything like me, wanting to go faster. Hit this deadline, hit that deadline, because you're going to get it back in spades at the end. So there's a personal challenge there to yourself to remain open to it, challenge yourself. Don't be scared about setting parameters, but do challenge to make sure that you're not setting them to the point that you are prejudging the outcome that you want, or driving people down a particular path that you've predetermined.
But I also imagine as well, if you're in that co-production with people and you're discussing these wishes that people want, but you're coming at them and you're considering what they're saying, but you're also saying, well, we'll consider it, but you know, there's this reason why perhaps we can't. You're being transparent, aren't you? Surely people would understand and appreciate it more rather than, you know.
Yeah, no one likes that but word, because that but word tends to you can lose trust. Oh yeah, of course we want to do this, but
okay.
Yeah, it's a great idea, but you know, it's a bit harsh.
Yeah. Often the person saying but is the one that has the power. Yeah,
it has the power and has the problem, because they're not really open to the fact that actually they may not be right. So there's no legitimacy in that but.
Okay,
right.
That's interesting.
It's what I find important is whatever we build, you can't get it 100% right. There will be needs to tweak left and right. That's the first point. But whatever we build is going to be so much better than what we've got. It's sometimes easier to remind people how far we are moving away from the intolerable situation that we're in, rather than letting them go all the way out here and then trying to pull them back.
Yeah.
Because that immediately gets people on the, oh, well, why did you ask then?
Yeah.
And that comes back to the art of setting the parameters. Don't let them go too far ahead, because getting them back from that can be painful, even if it's 100 times better than what they've got today.
Yeah.
So,
got to bring them with
there is a real art to setting the the parameters. And also, even if you do let people run as far as they possibly can, because there's massive richness in that, it comes back to what I was saying earlier about the power of co-refinement. Don't tell people, no, you can't have that. Actually challenge people to co-produce that answer if that answer is valid. So if you are peer reviewing, if you use a different co-production team to work with the co-production team that came up with that big idea, you might find that the practicality gets injected that way because they've got a slightly different view. They're coming from a different angle, from a different perspective.
It might be more possible than they originally thought.
Yeah, and you should let the process co-refine rather than picking the ideas that you like, because that is just as dangerous as not asking at all.